Welcome to Forest for Fish. My name is Mike Smulligan. I'm a forester with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, and in this second session, we'll take a look at some of the solutions that forests provide regarding water quality and fish habitat here in Michigan. So forests really are the best land use to provide water quality. And there's a lot of reasons why forests are very good at providing clean water and maintaining clean water. And a lot of these are fairly simple and fairly obvious when you stop and think about it, but let's take a minute and review some of the things that forests do to provide clean water. First, forests have permanent vegetation that slows water velocity. The trees and the shrubs and the other vegetation in forests intercepts the water that's falling from the sky as rain, slows down that velocity, and slows down the movement of that water through the ecosystem. That forests, because they also have undisturbed soils and a layer of leaves and litter on the surface of the soil, limits the erosion of the soil when the raindrops hit the soil. So the trees and the shrubs will slow down the rain. The undisturbed, the unplowed soil and the leaf litter further slows the velocity of water. And so that allows water, when it's falling on a forest, to infiltrate into the soil rather than run off the surface of the soil and erode the soil into the water nearby. So forests also have very good soil and vegetation that filters that pollutant. So because the water is falling into the soil and is infiltrating into the soil, that gives the soil the opportunity to filter that water and move groundwater slowly through the system and bind up and filter out some of the pollutants that are moving through that ecosystem. Forests also have very limited infrastructure and impermeable surfaces. There's not a lot of buildings and roads and parking lots in forests. Those parking lots and impermeable surfaces are where water hits that parking lot and it immediately moves over the parking lot, picking up oil and other contaminants and dumping it into the nearby lakes and streams. But you don't have a lot of those types of infrastructures or surfaces in forests. Forests have infrequent and small chemical spills. It's quite rare for there to be any chemical spill in a forest, and if it's associated with a logging operation, maybe a hydraulic hose, busts, and you may lose a couple of gallons of hydraulic oil into the ground in a forest management operation. But a few gallons of hydraulic oil is really a rare and small chemical spill compared to some of the larger chemical spills associated with industries, where if a pipe bursts, thousands and thousands, if not millions of gallons of contaminants could be dumped into rivers and lakes here in Michigan. So because of their physical system and their structure, forests do a really good job of slowing down the movement of water from the sky into lakes and rivers. And forests do a good job of regulating that movement of water. And that does a nice job of minimizing the flooding and the flashiness of streams. Hydrologists and fisheries biologists talk about streams being flashy, where the water comes up very quickly and floods after a rain event. But forests do a good job of capturing that water and moving it through the system slowly. So forests are a significant source of drinking water in Michigan and then also nationally. Two-thirds of the fresh water in the United States originates from forests, which only cover a third of the land area. And a lot of that is going to be out in the mountain west, where snow and rain falls in the mountains, and then as the snow melts in the spring, that relatively small area of forests in the Rocky Mountains delivers a significant amount of fresh water to people and industry and agriculture in the West. Now, here in Michigan, where we have a much flatter landscape, it's really more of a 50-50 arrangement, where forests cover about half of the state of Michigan and therefore are the source of about half of the fresh water moving through the state of Michigan. But forests are a significant source of drinking water for 180 million people in 68,000 cities around the United States. Here in the Great Lakes, more than 40 million people get their drinking water from the Great Lakes. So forests are a really important source of clean water and drinking water in Michigan and nationally. And if you want to provide clean drinking water, there's three things that you need to do. You need to protect the source area, you need to treat the drinking water to make sure that it's clean, and then you need to monitor the distribution system. Now you see here in the title I make a reference to Flint, and Flint was not a forestry issue, but forest could be part of the solution for Flint. Flint really was a breakdown of number two and number three. The water system in Flint didn't properly treat the drinking water, and the distribution system was full of lead. So Flint, Michigan, which has been an international scandal and has really brought a lot of shame to the state of Michigan for how we're delivering, clean water to our residents, has really, pointed out the importance of drinking water and access to clean water here in Michigan. And forests really are a part of that solution, because forests and forest management is all about number one, protecting that source area. And forests really are the best source for clean drinking water here in Michigan. So what are some things that we can do as foresters and loggers and truckers and fisheries biologists and landowners and anglers if we want to help manage and protect and enjoy the forests and water resources here in Michigan? And I think that there's a lot that we can do to protect those water quality in our forests. One of the things that we can do to help improve fish habitat is how we manage the land. As I spend a lot of time with fisheries biologists, I'm always impressed with how they pay more attention to the terrestrial system surrounding the water than they do sometimes even to the habitat in the water. Because fisheries biologists know that some of the best habitat and some of the best food sources for fish is coming from the forests surrounding the lakes and the rivers. And it's the trees that are both live and dead in the riparian zone that are providing erosion control and stabilizing the bank, that are providing shade to keep the rivers cool, that are dying eventually, and these trees are falling into the river, and this large woody debris is great habitat and is really important in both lakes and rivers for influencing fish habitat and how those streams and lakes function. So there's other things that we can do as loggers and foresters to provide good fish habitat. Keeping sediment out of the water is incredibly important, because sediment is probably the biggest source of pollution for rivers and lakes and fish habitat. And as loggers and truckers and foresters, we need to make sure that we're putting our roads in the right places, and that we're putting in good stream crossings and doing everything we can to keep sediment out of the rivers. Another thing that we can do to provide good fish habitat is to remove any barriers that have been installed previously, whether they're undersized culverts or unnecessary dams. There's a lot of infrastructure in our forests that are a legacy from decades ago, where culverts may have been too small and dams are no longer necessary. And so replacing and removing undersized culverts and removing unnecessary dams is really important to providing connectivity and allowing fish and other aquatic organisms to pass through the entire, watershed and all up and down the river. And then finally, wood is good on land and in the water. And we want to have a lot of trees that are falling into the rivers and are really providing a lot of important functions to provide good fish habitat and food sources for insects and fish that eat those insects, and really influencing the shape and the flow of rivers. So having large trees that eventually die and fall into the river is really important for good fish habitat here in Michigan. The Kent Conservation District over in Grand Rapids in Kent County is doing a really nice job to help landowners manage their riparian forests. And here you can see where the local conservation district, as part of their tree sale, they're trying to give a financial incentive to people that live along a stream to come in and buy some trees and plant trees to protect the fish habitat. And so this is a really nice effort by a local conservation district to showcase some of those connections between good land management and planting trees and protecting water quality and fish habitat in their area. Now, when it comes to protecting water quality in forests, the primary way that loggers and truckers and foresters do this is by implementing Michigan's best management practices for soil and water quality. And the BMP manual here, this really is our Bible to help us plan for good forest management activities that are going to be protecting soil and water quality. And the BMP guide helps us, plan for doing good work in riparian management zones. It is permissible to harvest trees within 100 feet of the river, but we want to be extra, cautious when working in that riparian zone within the 100 feet of a river. And we want to make sure that we're putting in stream crossings properly and that we're protecting wetlands and minimizing or cleaning up any spills and properly building forest trails and landings to protect water quality. And so BMPs really are an investment that loggers and landowners and foresters and truckers are making that is both protecting the site directly where the logging operation is happening, but is also providing immense benefits downstream. You can see here that the cover of the new 2018 BMP manual has a fly fisherman on the cover. And I actually took that photo. That's a fisherman over on the Platte River just southwest of Traverse City. This was in the fall of 2017 on a beautiful sunny October day as I was canoeing down the Platte River. And this angler was enjoying a beautiful river filled with fish. You could just about walk across the backs of the salmon that were coming up this river that day. And just a beautiful place, and this angler was enjoying a beautiful forest and a beautiful stream filled with fish because loggers further upstream had done a great job of managing that forest and taking good care of that forest and making sure that they weren't putting any sediment or other pollutants, into that stream. So when loggers and truckers and foresters and landowners are managing forest land, you really are providing water quality and fish habitat, on site and downstream. And this training is part of the Sustainable Forestry Initiative training that every year trains over 1,400 loggers in Michigan. And it's really important to follow, the standards of SFI. And certification, whether it's SFI or Forest Stewardship Council or the American Tree Farm System, all three forest certification programs require that loggers and landowners use BMPs, even if they're considered voluntary by the state, as they are here in Michigan. So here's a little infographic that we put together with the Forest for Fish project that showcases 6 of the most common best management practices that loggers are using to protect water quality and fish habitat. And we put this together because we want to use this infographic to help educate landowners and the public and policymakers that you loggers are doing a great job to protect water quality and fish habitat and doing things like building roads properly and protecting wetlands by using crane mats to protect wet soils and building stream crossings that are the proper width of the stream and cleaning up spills and taking really special care of riparian management zones and minimizing ruts and repairing them if they occur. These are all best management practices that loggers are using, and we want to encourage the use of these best management practices, and we want loggers to do a better job of telling the public and telling landowners that they're using these BMPs, and by doing so, they're providing clean water and good fish habitat here in Michigan. So when it comes to enjoying Michigan's water resources, the state of Michigan, we're pretty good at this. We're the Great Lakes state. We're surrounded by 4 out of the 5 Great Lakes. We've got 11,000 inland lakes, and the recreation associated with water in Michigan is a major part of our culture and our economy here in Michigan. Michigan State Extension did a study a couple years ago and found out that we've got 250,000 seasonal homes, and people, buy a cabin or build a cabin not down south near the cities or near the farms, but up north where there's, water and forest to enjoy. We have over 800,000 registered boats. These are boats with motors that require an annual registration. These aren't the millions more of canoes and kayaks that don't require registration, but a significant, boating culture here in Michigan, and more than 1.2 million anglers here in the state of Michigan. Now, in addition to managing, protecting, and enjoying forests, we also need to think about expanding forests here in Michigan. Now, forest cover in Michigan is stable and even increasing since the 1930s, but we're holding steady around, 20 million acres, and we have an abundance of forests here in Michigan, but there are some places where we need to expand forest cover in Michigan, and that's primarily in agriculture and in cities where we need to have more riparian forest buffers that are going to provide all the ecosystem services of slowing down erosion and filtering out pollutants and protecting the water in agricultural and urban areas. So there's opportunities to plant more trees and to expand riparian forest buffers in agriculture and urban areas. So in summary, just want to say that best management practices that loggers are already implementing are incredibly important to providing both on-site and downstream benefits of clean water and great fish habitat. And even though loggers are doing a good job now, we want to do an even better job and make sure that we're using BMPs properly every time that they're needed, because forests provide an abundance of clean water and quality fish habitat here in Michigan.